welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 510, and today's date is November 5th, 2014, and the title of this episode is Why Our Country's Training Armies to Control Mass Riots. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, we understand that Europe is in a huge recession/depression. Countries are not doing well. We look at Greece, Cyprus, Portugal, Spain, France, and now it's spreading to Germany and UK, and we see things completely falling apart. And now Eurozone retail sales, they have fallen by 1.3% between August and September. They only expected to drop 0.8%, so they completely missed on that. And we can see as time goes on, things are only going to get worse, because we have to remember the youth of each one of these countries, their unemployment numbers are very high. They don't have jobs. They're not saving money. They're not going out and purchasing goods from retail shops. They're not going to be purchasing the homes. They're still living with their parents. And we can see right now that this cannot be sustained. The amount of debt cannot be sustained. The amount of unemployment cannot be sustained. And right now, there is no way out of this except starting war. And this is what they're trying to do at this point. Here in the U.S., what are we seeing? Well, we have a lot of illusionary stats that continually come out. ADP came out with their stats, and we see that ADP printed about 230,000 jobs against expectations of about 220, modestly up from a revised 225,000 in September. The largest firms, over 1,000 people, slashed jobs, and we've been seeing this over and over again, layoffs continuing. Employment at large company, those with 500 or more employees, saw a big drop from 85,000 the previous month to only 5,000 this October. Companies with 500 to 999 employees added about 14,000 jobs, up from September's 8,000. However, the increase was offset by the loss of about 8,000 jobs by companies with over 1,000 employees, and we're seeing this continually happen. More and more people are losing their jobs. Now we see the U.S. services dropped modestly from 58.9 in September to a final print at 57.1 in October. This is the lowest since April. The U.S. service sector slumps as business outlook nears 2-year lows. And of course, real estate. Things are still not going with real estate, and they're not going to be going well. I just took a look all around the country, of course not in every single city, but in many different cities, many different neighborhoods. And what am I seeing? I am seeing a lot of homes on the market for more than 60 days now. Actually, they're approaching 90 days, and they've lowered their prices once or twice right now. And what are we seeing? Well, Mortgage Bankers Association said its seasonally adjusted index for mortgage applications activity, which includes both refinancing and home purchases demand, fell 2.6% in the week ending October 31st. Also, the refinancing applications fell to 5.5%. So this is continually happening. It is not getting better, and we all understand why this is happening, because the American people are completely tapped out. These job numbers are completely fake, phony, and false. They are very close to about 30%. Of course, they're giving us this 5.9%, which is absolutely ridiculous. Now, we understand gold has been smacked down once again, and it looks like a lot of paper ETFs were pushed onto the market, pushing gold down again, pushing silver down again. And since this happened, the U.S. Mint has just issued an alert to primary dealers across the U.S. that Silver Eagle's inventories, which according to the Mint began today at over 2 million ounces, are now sold out as of 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The Mint has reportedly sold through over 2 million ounces in less than 2 hours. People are taking advantage of this and buying as much as they possibly can. I bought today. Hopefully everyone else is purchasing, because when we see these prices come down like this, this is the time to go and pick up silver. And people saying, well, why would you do this? Looks like the gold and silver, they're continually dropping. Why would you buy now? Well, why would you buy when it's going up? It makes no sense. You buy when it's really low. If I told you silver was $1 an ounce, would you pick it up? Most people would say yes. Yes, I would. You have to have that mindset that when prices come down, it is the time to purchase these items. Now, what's very interesting in Europe and Canada, now we understand that youth unemployment is skyrocketing. The college graduates, the people coming out of high school, having a very tough time finding work. And people in Europe, who are running Europe, suggested a number of measures, including unpaid work for the young and unemployed up to 24 years old, so that companies would have a strong motive to hire young employees. Unpaid work sounded a lot like slavery to me. I mean, think about it. You go to college, you have these student loans, you want to find work, and they want you to work not getting paid. Very interesting how they're looking at this. Canada suggests that the employment situation is so bad that young people should consider working for free. Bank of Canada Governor Stephen Poloz said adult children stuck in their parents' basements because they can't find adequate employment should take unpaid work to bolster resumes as they wait for the recovery to take hold. Let me ask you a question. If the recovery takes 4 years, are you trying to tell me that they should work for a company for 4 years not getting paid? It looks like these corporations are looking for free labor. Now, I can understand before you graduate, you go in there and you spend some time in the corporation and you work there and you want to get experience. But once you graduate, you have your degree, you want that job. You have your student loans, you have debt, you need money coming in. But guess what? Basically, what they're telling you is that there are no jobs. They're out there screaming it on top of their lungs. We don't have jobs for you, and we need to keep you busy. Why do they need to keep everyone busy? Because in their minds, what they're thinking of is unemployment can create a powerful cocktail of unrest. This is the major worry. They're worried about if there's too many people unemployed who are young, they're all going to get together, start thinking about what's going on. Why don't we have jobs? Why are more and more people coming out of college not getting work? And all of a sudden, the whole thing just completely crumbles apart, and unrest, civil unrest starts all across each one of these countries. And maybe that's why all of these countries are training their armed forces to deal with mass riots. Now, Morgan Stanley is out there, and they're saying that Australia could face 5 years unless authorities further stimulate the economy. The nation's economy will expand just 1.9% in 2015, with 1.5 percentage points of that coming from higher exports, and unemployment will climb to 6.8%. The economic transition in Australia from the resources boom to East Coast recovery has now stalled. We revise our key forecast downward, which in turn make future policy settings key to avoiding recession. Now, of course, we're starting to see this completely spread to all the private Western central bank countries. And we're starting to see that these countries now are starting to have a downturn in their economy, and it is spreading like wildfire. Now, Ryan from UBS is out there saying, listen, oil price drop no longer has same positive effects on the economy because, as you know, when they lower the oil prices, what happens? People have more money in their pockets. They go out and they spend it in retail. But guess what's happening? They're not seeing the same effect at this point in time because people are saying, whoa, I have a little bit of extra money. I'm not running out buying a TV. I'm not running out buying this. I'm going to save it because this is the first time I have a little bit more money. And again, I don't know how long this is going to last. Of course, as we know, they're lowering the oil prices to strike back at Russia, strike back at Iran, strike back at China, and they're trying to really bring the Russian economy down at this time. They're trying to make it look like, yes, the sanctions are working, and we know that Saudi Arabia has pushed their production up very, very high. We'll have to see how long they can maintain this. Now, what's very interesting in Russia right now, there is legislation, a bill which was submitted to the State Duma, and it says that Russia may ban the circulation of the United States dollar. A bill has been submitted in the State Duma calling for the banning and terminating the circulation of the U.S. dollar in Russia. If the bill is approved, Russian citizens will have to close their dollar accounts in Russian banks within a year and exchange their dollars and cash to Russian ruble or other countries' currencies. If the law enters into force, it will be impossible to legally obtain cash dollars inside Russia, and this is a drastic move to completely bypass the dollar and not use it at all. And again, we have to understand, Russia understands what is coming. They realize NATO, the United States central bankers are continually provoking, trying to get this war started. This is why we see all the military assets spread across the world. It's in China. It is in Eastern Europe. We have it in Africa, in the Middle East, and it's continually happening, and they're trying to get any one of these countries to push war forward, because it doesn't really matter who starts it. All the players are the same, and we know from all the demonization that Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, Syria, these are the countries that we'll be going to war with. Now, it looks like they're going to continually to try to push online sales tax. And as we know, the government needs to bring in more revenue, and every single time a society where they have a crashing currency and the whole thing's collapsing, the last thing they do is they try to tax and go after money anywhere they possibly can. This is why FATCA is in force right now. And we see that advocates for states' rights to tax online sales could push through a bill in the next couple of months. The bill known as the Marketplace Fairness Act. And you know, whenever they label these bills, it's always the opposite. This is not a Marketplace Fairness Act. This is a tax bill to all those people who shop online. Now, of course, they're saying, well, you know, we have to make it fair because those people who shop in stores are taxed. We need to tax those people who are shopping online. But of course, as we know, most of the stores have online sites where they're selling there and in their brick and mortar stores. So it's really not a fairness act. Basically what it is, it's a way for the government to get more money from the people to boost their revenue coming into the government. That's all this is. Now, last month, records were produced showing the officials with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement misled Congress and the American people when they claimed that 2,200 undocumented immigrants released from detention facilities to save money were only low-risk offenders who do not have serious criminal records. In fact, the released detainees, including some who had been charged or convicted of serious violent crimes, including kidnapping, sexual assault, drug trafficking, and homicide. So we see right now all the illegals that are coming over the border, we see that they're not really doing a background check. They're not checking if they have any diseases. They're putting them on a bus, putting them in clean clothes, sending them around the country, and we're starting to realize that this is really having an effect in different areas where they're being sent, where they're committing crimes right now, where they're getting people sick. And again, this is all part of the Obama administration agenda to boost Obamacare, to give them work permits, to have them take out student loans, and they're at the right age to join the armed forces when we go to war. And all of this is for the corporations. And as we know, he kind of delayed the executive order until after the elections, and now we're going to see him try to push this through at this time. Now, right now, there's an anonymous million-person march underway. It's in the UK, US, and other places, and we're seeing that it's getting very, very tense in different locations. There is a tense standoff between Million Mask March protesters and police in London. I've seen videos in Washington, D.C., where people were screaming. The police are saying, get back, and they wanted to approach the Capitol, but they wouldn't let them, and it's really, really getting tense, and we have to watch this very carefully and make sure there's no agent provocateurs inside of these groups trying to cause riots or mass riots at this point, because again, why are countries training their armies, their armed forces, for mass riots? And we're seeing this come up quite a bit. Now, in Spain, in October, Spain has trained the country's army in the coastal autonomous community of Valencia to control the mass riots. However, authorities failed to explain why the soldiers had to undergo such training. One of the soldiers said, "They have shown us how to arrest people, how to put the handcuffs on and control the masses, everything like this, but they have not explained for what mission this training was required." The military sources told the newspaper that they found the exercises strange and unprecedented. Drills participants said that in the barracks the soldiers had been told that they must be ready for anything during these uneasy times. The exercises were extremely tough, including the use of force, and some soldiers got injured during the drills. Now, at the same time, in Spain, we see that military assets are being moved into Catalonia because, as we know, the Catalonian people are going to have a referendum. Everything is all set for November 9th, says a senior Catalan regional government official, as the region prepares to defy both the central government and the country's highest court and proceed with a much disputed weekend vote on whether to secede from Spain. Madrid has reportedly readied thousands of civil guard police officers to travel to Catalonia this weekend if needed. And we can see right now that all these countries, and we're not just talking about Spain, we're talking about Europe in general. They have the European police where they can be dispatched to any country if there is a problem. We understand that London ordered water cannons. We understand that United States have been training the armed forces, DHS, to deal with mass riots. And of course, as you know, when things really start to fall apart and people start to say, hey, the economy is collapsing, I don't have a job, I don't have money, I don't have food, how am I going to make it? People are going to be very, very upset, and this is why they're trying to keep the youth of America very, very busy by working for free. Now, in Western Africa, what's very interesting is that we know Ebola is going crazy there. We know there's a huge outbreak. But what's very interesting about all of this is about this Lassa fever. Ebola is not the only hemorrhagic fever that stalks West Africa. The Lassa season is about to begin. This year, like every year, around 20,000 people succumb to the disease in the region. The symptoms are identical to those of Ebola: fever, vomiting, bleeding. They all occur. It looks exactly like Ebola. Lassa, unlike Ebola, is spread by infected rats, but once it has infected people, human-to-human transmission begins. Like Ebola patients, those suffering from Lassa need to be treated in strict isolation. The situation causes two major problems. Firstly, cases of Lassa will go untreated, causing a surge in deaths from the disease. Secondly, people may assume they are suffering from Lassa because of its prevalence at this time of year, when in fact they are suffering from Ebola. Now, it could be the opposite way, where people think they have Ebola and they're suffering from Lassa. One has to wonder, though, if it was the pending Lassa season that made the World Health Organization suggest that the death rate from Ebola would massively increase in the latter part of this year. They predicted about 10,000 cases a week by December. If you add Lassa fever cases to the current rate of Ebola cases being reported, that would be about right. Now, this is from the CDC website. Lassa fever is is endemic in parts of West Africa, including Sierra Leone, Liberia, Guinea, and Nigeria. How interesting. However, other neighboring countries are also at risk. The number of Lassa virus infections per year in West Africa is estimated at 100,000 to 300,000. And this happens every single year. And all these things that are coming up right now seems very coincidental, and I do not believe in coincidences. I don't believe the United States brought down 4,000 military soldiers into this region to fight this Ebola disease. They are there to garrison the countries, to take them over, to remove the government when it is time. The UK is doing the same exact thing. And of course, we don't know for sure what they're really battling. Yes, there might be cases of Ebola down there, but it also could be Lassa fever. We are not sure at this time, but what I do know is that this is not what it seems. This is why the president will not ban flights to West Africa. He wants to keep the business routes completely open because Liberia is open for business. They want companies in there to give bids on the recently discovered oil. And we can see this is why he's fighting so hard not to put these bans. Now, Australia put bans from West Africa. Canada has, but the United States says no way. We know exactly what's going on down there, and we are going to take over Liberia, Guinea, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, and it's just a matter of time. Now, as we know, UK is down there, and they are going to open up their Ebola treatment center in Sierra Leone right in time for Lassa fever time, and a British-run facility to treat people with Ebola has opened in Sierra Leone. Meanwhile, UK troops have arrived in the West African nation. Now, again, like I said, Because of this outbreak of the so-called Ebola, we're starting to see that West Africa is basically falling apart. The ability of governments to raise revenues, increasing their exposure to domestic and foreign debts, may take them more dependent on aid. In total, the governments of Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone are experiencing a shortfall of about $328 million to be able to function at pre-crisis levels. The study shows the gaps are caused by increased spending to tackle Ebola crisis. And because of these financial constraints, the three countries are resorting to domestic and international borrowing, putting them further and further and further into debt. And this is exactly what the central bankers want. They are now on the hook. Okay, now Russia is out there, and they're saying Russia is going to take NATO's bolstered European presence in account when framing its new military defense plan. The envoy warned that alliance's decision to strengthen its eastern flank and the fact that NATO is returning to its Cold War stance of opposing what it considers to be the number one enemy would have long-lasting political implications. And basically what's happening is Russia realizes that NATO, the United States, and other nations are maneuvering their military assets into this region. Putin is not stupid. He realizes what's going on. He is completely separating himself and his country. China is really doing the same from the Western banking system, and they're continually doing this. Now, Kiev is ready to deliver gas and electricity to the self-proclaimed Donetsk and Luhansk area, and they're saying there's one stipulation, though. We want financial compensation after regaining control over the region. We will deliver gas and electricity there at the same time. I officially state, and this is Yatsenyuk talking, that as soon as we reestablish control over these territories, the cost of the gas and electricity that we will deliver to the Donetsk and Lugansk regions, now, which are temporarily out of central government control, will be subtracted from funds intended for these social benefits and subsidies. So is he saying that they're going to regain control of the southeastern regions? It sure does sound it to me. Now, Ukraine is out there, and they're saying that, yes, we paid the first tranche of the bill, but we're not going to order any gas whatsoever from Russia. This is our last point of getting gas into the country. Right now, Europe will remain a key gas supplier to Ukraine throughout the winter, and they're saying that Russia's Gazprom gas will be bought as needed arises. If they run into problems during the winter and they can't meet demands, then they'll go to Russia. But for right now, Europe is their main supplier, and they're not going to stop doing this. Now, John Kerry is out there, and he's saying, and he's giving a warning to Russia, that sanction pressures could be intensified over the Ukraine crisis, but urged Kiev not to get drawn into a tit-for-tat measures. Kerry said the choice is Russia's. Funny how it's always Russia. It's not the southeastern section, because this is who they're really dealing with, but it's Russia, as to whether to implement the Minsk agreement that was supposed to bring peace to Ukraine's rest of East. Now, again, Russia came up with the idea. Putin came up with a 9-point or 12-point plan of peace. The United States central bankers never came out and said, hey, let's have peace. They never even mentioned it. They never even said, let's have a dialogue and talk about peace. All they knew was, go get the southeastern section, then we'll turn toward Crimea. This is what the central bankers want. And right now, he went on to say that the president and I have repeatedly said that if the Minsk agreement is fully implemented, sanctions can be rolled back, and if it isn't, pressure will only increase. On the ground, authorities said there had been intensified shooting, and there's continually shelling of schools. People are getting hurt. And to me right now, it's starting to seem like the ceasefire is completely over. It looks like Kiev is maneuvering in. They've been maneuvering troops to the southeastern section. And of course, they're saying, oh, no, it's only there because we see Russia building up troops. We see Russia doing something. It's starting to look like they're going to have an offensive against the West. And we know for a fact what's happening here. They're ginning up the war once again. And right now, it looks like Ukraine is bracing for attacks from the east. And this is not going to end at all. It's going to accelerate as time goes on. Now, in the Middle East, what we're seeing is that France is going to begin supplying weapons to Lebanon. Their deliveries are going to be coming in early of 2015. And in Libya, the major Libyan commercial port of Benghazi has been closed due to ongoing fighting between Islamist militants and pro-government forces struggling to retake the area. All ship movements and discharging of imports have been stopped. Also, in Libya, major oil fields are now shut down. Production has come to an halt because of the people of Libya. There is a lot of fighting going on. The field was producing around 200,000 barrels of oil, and now it's completely shut down. And like I said, once these people take over the oil fields, take over the ports, and completely control them and start production up once again, and they try to sell this oil not using the U.S. dollar, this is when there's going to be major problems. And we have to remember, France and with the United States is setting up military bases right outside of Libya. We know that Egypt is maneuvering inside of Libya, and we can see right now they're getting prepared to do something. And like I said, right after these elections, we're going to see things really start to ramp up right now. Now, UK is sending forces into Iraq. Of course, these are just advisors. They're just going to train. They're really not going to end up fighting, but they are combat ready, just like the United States. And we see mission creep where more and more of the coalition are bringing in military assets, which is boots on the ground inside the country. Now, Russia is out there, and they're saying that the leaders of the Islamic terrorists could be under the direct influence of NATO and Western powers using their movements to threaten Russia's territorial integrity, says a former general of Russian military intelligence service. The general has also commented that Baghdadi, the head of the Islamic State group, is part of the CIA. He's part of NATO. He's working for the United States. And he went on to say that this man had been recruited to work for the U.S. by General Petraeus, the former director of the CIA and former commander of the coalition forces in Iraq and Afghanistan. Back then, he claimed the Islamic State was acting on orders from the West and Europe. And we kind of know this for a fact that they are the proxy army of the United States, Israel, UK, and other Arab nations, because this whole mission is to retake those governments that are falling, which is Libya, Lebanon, and Yemen and Iraq, go into Syria and Iran and remove those governments and place a puppet regime in these areas. Now, of course, we've been hearing that the Islamic State has been capturing the gas fields and they're taking it over, and the United States is going to come in and bombing them. And it looks like Assad is going to put a stop to this, because what happened is that the Syrian army recaptured two key gas fields and gas company in central Homs province less than a week after the seizure. Regime forces and pro-regime militia retook control of the Jar and Mar gas fields, as well as the Hayon gas company in the east of Homs province. And we can see right now these are very important because they supply electricity to Damascus. So they can't have these things being captured by the Islamic State and having the U.S. come in and bomb them. And as we know, the United States follows the Islamic State all over Syria, bombing their infrastructure, and they would love to bomb these areas to knock out the electricity in Damascus and leave them without any electric. But it looks like Assad moved in, had his forces retake this area because it is very important to him. Now, the Turkish Prime Minister has accused Syrian forces of committing massacres in and around Aleppo, and said Turkey would face a major new refugee crisis if Syria's second city fell into the hands of Assad. If Aleppo were to fall, we in Turkey would really be confronted with a large, very serious, worrisome refugee crisis. This is why we want this safe zone. This is why we need boots on the ground. This is why we want the United States to come in and the coalition and bomb this entire area and get rid of Assad's forces. I mean the Islamic State. You know what I mean. Now, it looks like Obama is out there. The elections are over, and he was giving speeches, and it seems like we are heading down the path of putting boots on the ground. President Obama said Wednesday he is planning to ask the U.S. Congress to approve the use of military force against the Islamic State militants. And what does this mean? It means boots on the ground. And how do we know that this was going to happen? Well, we understood they're setting up a division headquarters that could support between 10,000 and 30,000 soldiers. They took over an air base inside of Iraq. They kicked out the Iraqis. They took it over, and they were going to use this as a base to go into Syria and to maneuver in Iraq. And we also understood from one of the Iraqi sources that about 13,000 soldiers were on their way to Iraq, and here we are already where, of course, this is already in motion. This is not something that he's just going to ask and all of a sudden they're going to appear. This was already planned. This was already in motion, and he knows for a fact that this is going to be approved, and they're going to maneuver these 13,000 soldiers into Iraq. And eventually what's going to happen, these boots on the ground will then enter Syria, and we talked about this once before, where they're training the opposition forces, which are not really trained just yet, but they're going to use it and pretend that they're there for defense, and they're going to have special forces move into Syria, and before you know it, we have military assets on the ground in a sovereign nation without the permission of that country. And this is going to cause major problems as we go forward. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared.